Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Fritz. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this kind of ad hoc conversation. We typically don't talk with industry partners about specific products in our group, which is kind of why we put this on a side conversation. But talking to some of the partners that are part of our state executives, we thought this would be a really great conversation and introduction to a product that may be beneficial to you, at least for you to know what is out there for yourself as well as some of your members. There are a few of our state partners that are familiar with WiseOx and use WiseOx, including Argentum. At the Argentum Leadership Summit a few weeks ago, WiseOx was able to talk a little bit about utilizing AI from the side that we would utilize it from, not necessarily in operational efficiency, but really on the marketing side as well as member engagement. And so when Diana brought this conversation up, I thought, man, this might be really great to have a conversation with all of everyone about. And so today you're going to meet Fritz and Michelle, who are both from WiseOx. You're going to hear from Diana and Mike, who both use WiseOx. And I'm hoping that you will enjoy it as much as what I've been able to learn over the last few weeks. So, Fritz, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Katie, especially for feeling under the weather. You did an awesome job to kick us off. Okay, so first of all, my name is Fritz Brumder. I'm the co-founder, one of the co-founders and CEO here at WiseOx. And today I wanted to start by just giving you some training and education and helping level set everybody on what is this big trend in AI? Why is it important? What is actually the thing that has changed from years past till today? And I think that will give you a lot of insights and help you kind of demystify and understand how AI can be used in your business. Then we're going to go into the panel discussion. We'll have a brief demo of some of the products, and we'll show some screenshots and some examples of how these trained AI systems can be used. We also have a program that we're launching today. As Katie mentioned, we are currently partners with WALA, TALA, FSLA, and CALA. But we'd love to, there's definitely value in the masses here, especially as it relates to state-by-state regulations. And so hopefully we can get more states on board and share more national regulations, AI use cases and regulations nationally. And then get your questions ready because we're going to have a Q&A session here at the end. Okay, first of all, on the trends and why AI is so important today, and what, if I could boil down into one word, what is the hype? Why are people talking about AI so much? And it has to do with language. So when I say knock knock, I think everybody on this call knows exactly what is going to come next. I'll take that just a little bit further. If I say the best way to predict the future is, some of you may know the answer to that. Let's try this one. You miss 100% of the shots, or the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. So those three quotes, if you take the concept of knock knock, where I know 100% of the people on this call knew exactly what was going to come after that, you take those three quotes and they get a little bit harder depending on your background, et cetera. But I asked one of our trained AIs to finish those quotes for me. And of course, it not only got 100% of them, but it also got who the actual quote was attributed to. That is essentially what a large language model is doing. I'm sure you've heard of the acronym LLM or maybe NLP, natural language processing. That is essentially the new technology that has been created that makes AI more valuable for you as an individual user and for your business. You may have also heard or read articles that what an AI is doing is predicting the next word in a sentence. But it actually goes a little bit beyond that. The concept of LLM or large language model is predicting the next word, just like I did in the quotes or knock knock. But the concept of natural language processing means that it also understands what these quotes actually mean. Why would somebody get excited about this concept of you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. It not only knows what the next word is, but it also knows, okay, that means that I should probably take more risks. If I don't ever, put something in play, if I don't ever ask, if I don't ever try something new, then I'm not actually going to achieve the goal that I'm looking for. So there's more depth to the knowledge and understanding of AI and large language models today than there ever was before in the past. So hopefully everybody's tracking on that concept in just your general world and your general, day-to-day usage. And I'm sure almost everybody on this call has interacted with AI to some extent in the past. And you'll see that, right? It can generate so much more text and it feels like it has meaning and context behind it. So if we take that concept and now I'm going to start to put it into more business contexts. So rather than us as individual users, why is this important for your association and your operations, especially knowing that you guys are resource constrained. You all have small teams, but you all have big missions and you have big communities that you need to communicate with. And that's where I think AI is really going to generate a lot of value for you. So the first piece of advice I have is that now really is the time. We'll take this, quote theme a little bit further. There's an old proverb that says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. If we put that in the context of the AI world, the best time to adopt AI was 18 to 20 months ago. The second best time is right after you get off this call. Not during the call. You don't need to go kickstart it too fast, but now's the time. And don't worry about failure. Like the Wayne Gretzky quote says, just get started, just try something because you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So at least put the ball in play and try something in AI. So if you're not convinced yet at this point, think about this from an employee standpoint. And this is everybody on this call, but this is also your teams and also the operators and all of your members. They need to understand that the metrics are overwhelmingly in favor when users adopt AI. So for individual employees, workers using AI finish 12% more tasks. They complete those tasks 25% more quickly, and they produce a 40% higher quality result. And that's just with us in our normal daily workflow and attaching AI to our workflows and processes and steps and just implementing AI into our day-to-day work. This will also help people better understand that I think this is a myth that has been debugged a little bit recently, or people don't talk about it as much, that AI is coming for our jobs. I think everybody has kind of gotten to the point where they understand how our day-to-day work plus AI is an unlock of some potential new that we can create. It's just like the internet, right? The internet value of the internet is so much more amplified by an individual user that knows how to use the internet, that knows how to use software and technology to make themselves more productive. One other statistic, LinkedIn put out a study that says 66% of employees would not hire somebody new if they don't have AI experience or skills. So all of us as individuals, plus everybody within your team, you're doing yourself a favor, you're doing your team a favor by creating opportunities for them to experience AI and get to know the capabilities of AI. Now, there are quite a few different types of AI out there. So I wanted to kind of narrow our world down, and our call today is really focused on this concept of AI agents, or in our case at WiseOx here, we call them AI mascots. And these are trained AIs. And so what we are essentially doing is taking all of your proprietary content and information that would never be a part of something like Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude. These are very broad and large models. And we are kind of narrowing their focus a little bit to your world and your context and your information. And so what the AI is doing is it's when you're interacting with it, or you may have heard the word prompting, essentially a fancy word for asking questions. When you ask questions of the AI, it's always going to take into context your information and your content, and then the answer it's giving you is going to be based on your data and your information. So let's take a quick customer example. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Sonita Senior Living. Sonita has built a trained AI that understands their employee handbook, standard operating procedures, all of the systems that they use, anything related to HR, talent, people, onboarding, which is obviously a huge need within our industry. Joy, who's their trained AI mascot, has all of that context and information. So when you're asking her a simple question like, is this a holiday? Or where do I go to file my expense report policies? Let's say you're a new employee. That would be a softball question, right, for somebody on the HR team to handle, but it's probably one that they get over and over and over. And so the feedback that we have heard from Sunita that's been able to adopt AI in the HR category is it really takes away a lot of those repetitive questions. And that'll be a theme that you'll start to hear both Diana and Mike talk about when you hear about their use cases with state by state regulations. This is a screenshot of Ruth. Ruth is the trained AI agent or AI mascot that has been created for TALA. And this is just one example of a question that a user may have relating to AL or requirements for residents to be required to use call pendants within their facilities. So this is not just pulling the general broad knowledge base of large language models. It's narrowing it down to Texas and then narrowing it down to TALA and then narrowing it down to this one individual user's questions. So those are a couple use cases and examples, and we're going to go into a few more of those in a minute. But let's assume that now you understand, what's the revolution in AI? Why is this important for my users? What's the productivity increase that they're going to see? And you've seen a couple examples of this particular flavor of AI, which again narrows the world and narrows the context down to your state, your association, your information. I want to give you a couple pieces of advice that after this call, when you look to adopt AI and look to figure out where's the best place that I could start, because there's obviously so much opportunity within AI. So the first piece of advice I have is you want to stay safe. Using broad, publicly available, especially free AI tools within those terms of service and terms of use, they're getting access to all of the content, all the information that you're putting into those systems. So you want to use AI in a safe way where your content, your information stays within a walled garden, because the only way you're going to get value in a business context out of a very broad, large language model is to put more information into it, upload files, copy paste information, put it into your prompt, and all of that becomes part of the public domain and public context. So you want to pick a tool that keeps your content, your information safe. Second, you want to pick something that aligns with your brand, aligns with your industry. One of the advantages of this concept of trained AIs or AI mascots is that they learn from the content that you load into them. So the language, the tone of voice, the level of detail, all of that teaches the mascot how it should be responding to end users. So you'll quickly see how trained AIs can start to feel like an extension of your team. One of the bars of success we always have is after you set it up and configure it the first time, would you hire this person? Do you feel like they'd be a valuable, productive member of your team? The third piece of advice is obviously keep it simple. There's so many different ways and places and opportunities for AI. You just want to get started with a use case and kind of narrow the world as opposed to make it really broad, because then it's hard to understand what's working and what's not working. And the final piece of advice is, get the right support. Align yourself with a partner and a team that has senior living industry experience that you can resonate with and trust. They're responsive, and you get the level of support from a customer success standpoint that you have an email, you have a person to get in touch with. So I'm sure there'll be lots of questions around that, but I do want to jump into our conversation with Diana from TALA and Mike from WALA here in a second. But if you have questions and you want to follow up, you want to get more information, Michelle at WiseOx will be the best contact for you. And then we are also going to post into the chat function a link to be able to book a follow-up meeting after this. We have some special programs and discounts that we're going to offer here at the end, but I don't want to get too much into that. Why don't we switch to our conversation here with Diana and Mike? So my first question, and Diana is also a little bit under the weather, so I'll leave it up to you who takes this first. But I want to, since both of you are beyond the point of adopting AI and creating your first trained AI, I want you to think about, for the users on the call, what was life like before you got into AI, and what is life like after you've now gotten over the hump and launched your first use case?
That's a good question. I would say that the routine, repetitive questions that we get, my policy person doesn't have to take those anymore. When we get a member in that's asking something, she can direct them to we put ours behind our paywall. So you have to be a member. And she's able to direct them to there so that they can ask those questions. And it's especially as we're getting ready to head into our legislative session, her time is so consumed right now. So having a place where she can easily send people to so that they can get their questions answered quickly. As our legislative session progresses, it'll be key because there'll be a lot more times when she is out of pocket. And it's just, it really does feel like you've got somebody else that's on the team taking a certain area.
I completely agree with Diana. It's a huge resource. It's unbelievably easy to use. It can be updated whenever it needs to be updated. And I think just allowing to have a membership resource that's available during non-business hours, at nights, weekends, holidays, and everything else is very helpful. And I mean, we've used the resource too. If a question comes in, having to just, type in the question into into WiseOx versus having to research the regulations or the statutes is a huge time saver and unbelievably helpful.
Maybe both of you, I think, mentioned the concept of the word search, right? So you would go to the PDF or to the right page or document, you would do a word search. Explain how you were doing it before, and then a little bit more about the prompting and interacting with AI.
So Texas has a huge number of places where there are governance. Obviously, we have statutes, we have regulations. Our regulations and our statutes are not in one place. Like you do go to the place where you have statutory authority that was invested in our regulatory body to govern assisted living. But things that govern assisted living are all throughout all other statutes, and the same thing with regulations. It's not just in one chapter. We've got other chapters where you find regulations. So you almost have to have had to do it quickly. You have to know where you're going to go look. And then we have guidance that comes from our agency. We have technical memorandum, we have provider letters. So, and none of that stuff is easily searched. The provider letters are the worst because we have I don't know, it's over 150 provider letters and they're not digitized. So being able to search them on the web agency's website is very difficult. And so you'll get people all the time. I know there's a provider letter on this. I can't find it.
Okay, great.
Completely agree. Those provider letters and the opinions are, even if you remember that there is one and then trying to find it and then what it means and everything else, and just having the access and availability to that for the system to have all that at their fingertips is very helpful.
Let's talk a little bit about the process to organize that information, because what you have to do in order to create a trained AI is organize your content and then get it into the system or the brain of the AI mascot. So that may seem a little bit daunting to people. So explain your process and your experience collecting that information and then loading it into the AI.
So all that credit goes to my policy person, Carmen Tilton. She is super organized. She created a spreadsheet and she started putting in the spreadsheet all the things that she was turning over. She's working with Michelle, all the things that she was turning over to Michelle to be able to load into Ruth for us. And at the end of the day, it was like 200 data sources of all the information that went into our mascot.
Yeah, I think honestly, we really just kind of felt bad for Michelle. It was a huge data dump on Michelle, and then Michelle just kind of took it and ran with it. From our standpoint, it was super easy. It was just sending links, sending documents, and then Michelle did all of the heavy lifting and put everything into the system on our behalf. So it was seamless from our standpoint.
Okay, so now you've collected all the information, you've put it into the mascot either yourself or with the support of Michelle. How did the mascot start to take shape? How did it learn from the information? And then what steps did you take after that to validate it? Did you get other team members involved? And how much time or how quickly did you vet the knowledge of the mascot to be able to say, yes, this is approved, so to speak?
So when I initially talked to y'all about doing this, we were, I don't know, 2 months out from our annual conference. And I want to say within a 6-week period, basically, y'all were able to work with us to design it, get all the documentation loaded. And we started pinging it. Michelle started pinging it and just asking her questions. And I call her, I refer to Ruth as her, our mascot, asking her questions to see how she would answer them. And then at our annual conference, we kind of did a soft launch where we allowed certain folks to have access to her. We've got an attorney on our board that really wanted a chance to start asking questions. We've got another person that works on our workforce stuff that has been in senior living for a long, long time. She wanted to start asking. And so we kind of did like a soft launch of her where we had people that were very knowledgeable, that we also knew that if they got a question that they felt that it was a wrong answer, that we would get an immediate response from them of, hey, this isn't right. And so that's how we did it. And then we launched it to our board next and let them start pinging it and make sure that, and Carmen monitors it, Michelle monitors it, I monitor it to look at those questions and make sure that the answers are correct, robust. And then once we were satisfied, then we rolled it out to the rest of our membership.
It's very similar in Wisconsin to what Diana did in Texas. We're in like those final stages of development right now. And so what we did initially was have staff really kind of ask her questions in terms of the typical questions that we received. It was kind of scary how accurate it was, like right off the bat. It was unbelievable. There were a couple of nuances here and there that we had to correct, particularly so in Wisconsin, we have three different licensure categories for assisted living. So we just had to train Wanda on those three different licensure classifications, the different regulations, because as we all know, we have members that will just ask a question, can I do this in assisted living? Well, that's great, but what category are you talking about? And so, the question then becomes, which one are you talking about? And then the answer is ultimately, very much accurate. Next steps are going to be running it past our regulatory relations committee that's formed of key members and a couple of board members. And then from there, probably some other just, members to try and make sure that we're not missing anything, with the goal of having it rolled out at our upcoming annual conference at the end of February.
Great, thank you. Well, we got one more category of questions around ROI and what you expect to get out of adopting AI. But I want to make sure that everybody knows we're going to do a Q&A session, so you can post your questions into the chat function, or you can unmute yourself and ask a question once we get to that point. And we may have a partnership with Stanley, actually. The Stanley craze, every water bottle that everybody wants. We have a partnership. They've been a customer of ours here in the past, and so we've got some Stanleys to give away for the best questions. But first, for Diana and Mike, let's talk a little bit about ROI. Were there any areas that you were able to offset your cost and time and energy with AI that you were otherwise spending money in other categories?
Yeah, for us, we had a person that was on contract that was basically Carmen's backup. Whenever she couldn't get to something, or if there was something really time consuming that she couldn't do the research on, she would be her backup. And we would go sometime months and months with her not actually doing anything because Carmen was able to handle stuff. And so we went ahead and pulled that contract and gave it to another policy person that's doing a whole separate thing for us that we wanted. So we reallocated those funds in the policy budget, but to another person to help with a different area. And so that was huge for us, to be able to focus on something else that we wanted to. And to me, it's an incredible member benefit. I recently met someone at the Argentine Leadership Summit, and when he heard about it, he plugged me into his technical person back at their home office. And this is one of our industry partners, and she came back with, yeah, I know about Ruth. I've been using it. She's great. And so I was like, oh, that made me feel really good. That she had already found out about it and she was using it, and that she hadn't encountered anything that gave her pause.
I agree. It's definitely going to be a freer up of time for staff in terms of allowing them to do some other stuff. And also it's a significant membership benefit. Definitely hoping that, might be, draw in non-members to become members to be able to utilize this benefit. Along with that too, we have an attorney on retainer basis, and we're hoping to maybe, not having to use that as much for these types of questions, and maybe we can kind of reduce that retainer, or maybe kind of focus on other, legal issues to kind of help with that. So that's kind of been the ROI from our standpoint.
Great, thank you so much. We've got a couple quick questions, and then we're going to switch back to Michelle after we answer these questions. We'll show a little bit more of a practical demo and example of how these mascots work. So first question just has to do with recording. Yes, we are going to record it. So we'll share that out via email. A question from Debbie: how long did it take from start to finish to implement Ruth and Wanda? So just off the top of your head, and then I can give our averages.
Yeah, the development, the data loading, and then the soft launch. We were probably up and being able to run fully within 3 months. The beginning to the conference was maybe 6 to 8 weeks when we started having others besides herself ask questions.
I think we've been doing this now since the first part of October, and we've already done a lot of significant work into the system. Honestly, the only really delays are trying to figure out, getting other, members or committees to really kind of take the time to ask the questions and everything else. Otherwise, everything is pretty easy and seamless to do and can go fairly quickly.
And typically from our end at WiseOx, we see like 2 weeks would be fast. If you have a use case where you're like, I need to get this thing up and running, 2 weeks would be pretty quick. And that is definitely possible. But most of the time, you're in that 4 to 6 week category to really launch it to your test users, have them utilize it, provide feedback. So it's less in the work and more in just the timing and coordination of everything. We do have quite a few questions coming in, but actually I'd love to switch over to Michelle and just show some more of the front end experience.
Thanks, Fritz. I am going to share my screen really quick. We've talked a lot about AI as a whole. We've talked about how Diana and Mike are using it. I want to show you, right, how do members access this? It's great. We love it. We think it's fantastic. But I want to show Diana's workflow very quickly in terms of how members are getting the benefit of using Ruth, using their mascot. So this is a member benefit. We've got to go to the membership login. I've got a login. I've got it all queued up, so it shouldn't take more than a moment. But Ruth is right there on the page. She comes up looking a little bit different for me just because I've used Ruth on the membership page. She'll look something like this when you join. We're just going to come in and ask her a very quick question, give her a moment to respond so that, right, as a member, if I put myself in a member's shoes and I want to know a question about continued education or about one of the provider letters or about bed rails or something along those lines, I can just come directly to the member portal login. That makes sure that I'm a member, I've paid my dues, and I'm using Ruth to the best of my ability. I want to quickly transition to CALA. CALA has a very similar workflow. They've got theirs behind a member portal as well. It's just in a little bit of a different workflow. We've got Ada down here in the corner. We click on her. This will take us to login. If you're not a member, you have the ability to sign up and log in. And she's right there on your homepage. We can come in here and we can ask her a question. We'll just start a new chat very quickly. We've got buttons along the bottom. I didn't show that with Ruth, but we do have buttons along the bottom that allow us to kind of point users or members in a specific direction. A lot of folks will come in here and they're like, I'm not really sure how to even get started with this. I don't know what questions I could ask. All of the regulation mascots that we do build, we recommend putting a getting started button so that folks do know how to come in here and ask those questions or how to kind of start the conversation with the mascot. But then they just come in here and they interact with the mascot just as they would a team member. Now, one other thing I will say is no mascot is perfect, no human is perfect. So we do have the fallback of how do I connect with a staff member or who do I reach out to if I do have additional questions and those types of things. But really, this is intended to take a lot of time off of your plate in responding to the same questions that you get asked over and over and over again.
Thanks, Michelle. So going back to the questions, Katie, thanks for clarifying Lisa's question about keeping records. So yes, as an administrator, TALA and WALA, et cetera, can see all the interactions with their mascot. Individual end users only see the questions and interactions that they have done. Currently, end users can participate as a guest. So you don't actually know who the user is, but you can teach the mascot to ask for their contact information. Within the next couple of weeks, though, actually, we are releasing a feature that would require end users to put in their name and email before accessing the mascot. So that type of feature is coming up, and you can then, see those the session that the person had and be able to follow up with them individually. Melissa asked a question about what exactly would members use it for. Today, we've talked a lot about state regulations and governance. And that's one of the biggest use cases that both TALA and WALA are using. So any member, any operator that needs to come to the association to get information, to answer their questions about state regulations, that's the primary use case that we've been talking about today. But there are other use cases, as I mentioned, in HR and also in sales and marketing. You internally and or your potential members or your current members can utilize the mascot to get information about your programs, your events and conferences. So you can train an AI mascot, put it on your website, and then use it to be able to communicate more often, use it for marketing to your existing members and your prospective members. Actually, if you go to Argentum's website, they have a mascot on their site that's called InfoLink, and that's the purpose and function of that mascot. So, Michelle, since you're still sharing your screen, you could maybe show that. Let's see, Mark asked a question, can the mascot learn from web pages that contain other assets like PDFs or FAQs? Yes, so we can scrape individual websites, or you can load PDFs. You can connect to your Google Drive if you use Google platform, or you can connect to your Microsoft OneDrive or Microsoft SharePoint, and that will sync all of those files. So if you have documents either in SharePoint pages or OneDrive files, then those can be connected to your mascot, and that's what your mascot learns from. This is also related to another question that we had about regulations changing. So as things update, that is still a job that internally needs to be done. So Carmen at TALA that's becomes more of her focus of time, less on like, okay, I need to answer this question that I've been asked 100 times before, and more, how do I get ahead of the curve on all the policy changes and updates? Or even better yet, how do I become more of an active participant to help make sure that the regulations are industry friendly, et cetera? So there's always a lot more work to be done that's creative and strategic, and probably a lot more fulfilling for Carmen than answering the same questions over and over. So that job is typically still on the team to be able to update things. And then the mascot does have connections to all those documents. So as the documents update or the URLs update, you can just publish to the mascot and it will go learn the new information. And then from that day forward, it will have the new content and information. So if you're in a state where the regulations are changing rapidly, it's not that cumbersome to keep the mascot up to date. And then we have some states where they're much more evergreen. I think Mike shared in Wisconsin, the policies don't change all that much, but the provider letters do, or other parts of the regulations do change. So there's content that needs to be updated on a regular basis. Let's dish a question back to Diana and Mike. This comes from Jackie on how did you market the availability of your mascot to your membership?
Well, we started out right before our annual conference. We talked to our board about it, and we actually showed her at a board meeting so our board members would be aware of it. And then we talked about her during our annual conference. My policy person, Carmen, does a presentation. She talked about it during her portion of her presentation. And then we had a booth where WiseOx was at, where people could come up and ask her questions. And then after conference, we did social media, went into our newsletter. We did a webinar we had other new benefits that were rolling out for members. So we did what have we done for you lately? And we had all these other things along with WiseOx of the benefits that TALA was offering that were new to this year.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to that point yet, but I think it's going to be very similar to what Diana just described. We're looking forward to rolling this out at the annual conference, and then definitely looking forward to WiseOx being there as well to kind of help promote this. But I think there's going to be a lot of, showcasing it there at the conference, allowing, board members and also those select committees that have kind of already tested this, that really kind of talked about it in terms of testimonials, social media, email campaigns, thereafter, just to kind of showcase this new membership benefit, what it is, and kind of go from there. So that's kind of our plan.
Great. We have another question that was a little while back from Karen about selecting the right partner. I'm probably the most biased, of course, that WiseOx is the right partner. So could you guys just comment quickly about your experience working with WiseOx and our team?
I wanted the first time we ever talked to y'all about industry partners, I'm always very hesitant to work with people on a big project because I have had someone in the past that I worked with on a big project and it didn't pan out like it was supposed to. But I met y'all, and then a couple of weeks later, maybe about 3 or 4 weeks later, I had a repeat meeting with y'all. Just felt very comfortable with the WiseOx team. I knew some other industry partners that had worked with the WiseOx team. Then I did some research on it. And I just felt that they were going to be able to deliver on what they were telling me they were going to be able to deliver. And then when Andy told me, when I said, hey, I've got 6 weeks to our conference, can we get this done? And he's like, absolutely. I'm like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah, I agree. We're also, hesitant in terms of who we exclusively work with, just from a fairness standpoint, equitable, and we just don't want to kind of open up the floodgates to everything else. But I had a chance to meet with and talk with both Andy and Michelle at the Argentum conference, and so I thought that was a really good conversation. And I've worked with Diana for many years, and I had heard that they already work with Diana at TALA. So thankfully, Diana was gracious enough to meet with me and talk with me in terms of what they've done and working with WiseOx. And so honestly, it was from there, it was like, this is a great fit for us too. We're definitely looking forward to this. And then from the get-go, it's been Andy and Michelle have been unbelievable to work with. We meet with Michelle. Sometimes it's weekly, sometimes it's every other week. And she does a great job of keeping us on task to make sure that, from a timing standpoint, we're going to make our deadline. The work has been seamless. And so they've done a tremendous job of getting it to the point that we're currently at right now.
Great. Well, we've got a couple more questions that I want to make sure that we answer, but just my commentary on working with WiseOx. One of the huge benefits that we're trying to create here is the power in community, the power in the masses. So we are very focused on the senior living industry, of course, and really the real money and opportunity for us is with the operators. We want to partner with the states because we think that that is going to drive the most value, since you guys are mostly small organizations that need to get a lot done with very few people. So we're trying to create a price point that makes sense for the states. So as I mentioned earlier, we want to do at least 50% off or something that would really make this palatable. So a few $100s a month as opposed to thousands of dollars a month that we are typically priced for our operating partners, I think is the price point that makes the most sense for states. And we'd love to follow up with you about that and schedule a demo. So I think Michelle was going to post a link into the chat function, or you can reach out to Michelle at wiseox.com to schedule that. And we would like to, push that forward as much as possible before the end of the year. So definitely the best pricing and programs that we can put together here before the end of the year is going to drive the most value for you and your membership. One other comment on use cases, at WiseOx, we're also a pretty small team. And so I often say, we're 7 humans, but we're also 4 AIs. We use an AI for legal. We use an AI for sales and marketing. We use an AI for customer support and product feature updates. And so one of the questions that came through, this is from Nancy, has to do with how we make enhancements to our software. We are a software as a service platform or a cloud platform. So we have a huge advantage and ability to be able to make updates to the platform very quickly. So our product development process really all has to do with feedback that we get from individual states or from operators, and also speaks to this community value. The more, I think, partners that we have working with us in the industry, the more cohesive all of that feedback is going to be. Or we're going to hear from more voices that, hey, this is what we really need in order to be successful. For example, on this call, there's been multiple questions, and Mark asked about this. Can WiseOx more proactively look at the source data and information and be able to update you as the individual states and associations when something changes? Because right now, yes, the Mascots mark can stay up to date, but you go in and you basically say, check for updates. It's going to go to the documents, it's going to go to the URLs and find out if there's any new information there that the mascot needs to be trained on. But there's a proactive step that needs to be done. Right now, we don't have a feature that's proactively going out and looking for updates to rules and regulations. It's something that we've loosely talked about with Argentum, but I think that the more voices we hear on that, the more relevant it is. Then, Nancy, to your question, we would develop the features and scope around that, and we would release it to all customers. Typically, majority of our features are released to all customers when we do product releases. So one of the ones that I mentioned was the end user authentication. When we launch that in the next couple of weeks, that's going to go to everybody. We have more of a fun question from Melissa about the mascot concept. I think it's fun. Obviously, Ruth has become kind of a name and another person and another entity, another, a capacity at TALA that didn't exist prior to adopting AI. But can it be an animal? Yes, it definitely can. As you saw on Argentum's website, it has more of like a technology or like forward-thinking approach with InfoLink. But we've also have another customer that has a mascot named Petey, and the mascot of Petey is a dog as opposed to a person. So you don't have to humanize everything. Okay, we've got, let's see, more questions relating to, there's quite a few here. So hopefully if I don't get to them, feel free, anybody, to unmute yourself and ask a question. It looks like, Seth, your question also was relating to how we update regulations. So again, that theme of proactively looking at regulations would be important for us. Okay, how does your program relate to or compare to GPT-4 Pro? So Debbie, this relates to this concept of the AI mascot, we call them, or AI agent. This is where the AI is working in parallel to trained content. So, for example, we use actually the capability or something very similar to GPT-4 Pro in the background, but we are supplementing that with all of your company information, and then each mascot is given instructions of what its job is, how it's to perform, where it's going to answer in certain areas and not. And so what that does is it makes WiseOx mascots more specific than GPT-4 Pro. It also makes them less prone to hallucinations. You may have heard it, I'm sure you've heard of hallucinations, but not in the context of AI potentially. In AI, that basically means the large language model has a tendency to want to please. So it's going, because it has access to so much information, it's always going to try to answer your question. And therefore, if it doesn't have specifics, if it doesn't have the right information, it's just going to come up with something. And often that something is wrong. Well, in the case of WiseOx and trained AIs and AI mascots, it's not going to do that. It's going to stop and say, if I don't have the context, if I don't have the training to answer this question, then I'm going to say that I don't have that. And in fact, you saw that in one of the demos there that Michelle was doing. And so that makes it much less of a liability for you to utilize than GPT-4 Pro. The other thing is GPT-4 is only really for individual users. So it makes it pretty hard to make that available to your entire membership base. You don't obviously want to pay for them or give them access to your OpenAI or GPT account or your paid program or whatever. You want to be able to extend the mascots. And so as Michelle mentioned and demoed there, you can put these mascots into your website. You can put them into SharePoint. They can have a little bubble. So we have some pre-configured interfaces that come out of the box for you. Katie has another question on is the data in a silo so that if a competitor in our state or a provider in another state gets access to your information? Yes, the information is siloed. So it does not, when you load it into your mascot, it's not shared with any other organization or state. And it actually is not even shared within other mascots. So if you have a mascot that has to be available and accessed via your membership login, but you also have a mascot that is doing sales and marketing and end user interaction, the knowledge base between those two do not cross over. So you can rest assured that the information and content that's proprietary to you, you keep that safe and secure. And then the information that you are already putting out there on your website is just maybe buried in places or blog posts or other types of content that can be publicly available. And of course, just like your competitors can do today, they can go to the website, they can interact with the mascot and try and call the information, but you're going to get a lot more visibility into what people are asking. And that's actually one of the kind of fun insights is what are the conversations? And I have found that reviewing conversations where the mascot answers and I'm sitting there saying, I maybe even would not have answered it as good as the mascot just did. That's like a great light bulb moment that you get to when you realize like, oh, wow, I really do have a lot more capacity and something that I didn't have to do that now the AI can take that on for me. Okay, we have a really good question from Mark about prompting. So prompting is the questions that you're asking, and really the output from the AI is only as good as your ability to ask a good question. One of the things that we do here at WiseOx is we provide some training around this. So we are available and willing to do webinars with your team. We have a talk that's similar to this, that's less like high-level AI trend focused and more focused on how do you use AI as an individual user. So this could be your teams and your organizations as an association, but it could also be your members. So we can provide training and education for how to ask the right questions. What are some prompt templates that you can use in order to get the right answers? We also have some tools. We have an AI named Pronto, and Pronto is trained on how to write good prompts. So you could take your prompt, put it into Pronto, and he'll kind of expand upon that prompt and help you figure out how do I take a one-line question and turn it into something that has a little bit more instructions and direction. And then that increases the probability that the output from the AI you're going to get. Another good piece of advice is AI does take a little bit of coming at it from this angle and coming at it from that angle, because oftentimes the first response that you get maybe isn't exactly what you're looking for. And if you start to realize that, that's what a good AI user knows how to do. So I mentioned that LinkedIn study where employers want to hire people that have AI experience. This is one of the skill sets that everybody on this call needs to learn, and or all of your teams need to learn, is how to interact with an AI to be able to get the results that you're looking for. Okay, we've had a lot of questions, so we're going to select a user here. I think because we've had so many questions, I want to do this in the fairest way possible. So I think we're going to email the person who won the Stanley with the best question after the call. Thank you, everybody, for all of your questions and participation, engagement. We hope to hear from you soon to set up a demo and go further on taking the next step with your AI Mascot and WiseOx program. Diana, Mike, we'll give you the last word. Any final comments?
I would just say, anyone, if you still have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk about it. Like I said, it has been a very enjoyable experience working with the WiseOx folks. And we really like it. We think it's a incredible member benefit. I know there are companies out there within the senior living space that are already thinking about doing their own regulatory type mascot, and I really think it's something that state associations, it's a great benefit if you're able to offer it so that you can be doing it rather than them, because you have to make sure it's got all the right stuff in there, and then you have to make sure it gets updated.
I completely agree. If anyone has any questions, definitely please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to try and answer them the best that I can, or just kind of showcase what our experiences have been so far. I think the biggest thing is, as Fritz just mentioned, was that sometimes we get these questions and we try and answer them as the best that we can, but actually, from our standpoint, using Wanda, I was just like, wow, that answer is a lot better than what I would have provided. So it actually kind of helps showcase your organization, and it's updated seamlessly. It's easy to implement, and we're definitely looking forward to having this be a membership benefit. And we know that members are going to really enjoy it because they've really been asking us about this for the past couple of months. So we're definitely looking forward to rolling out. And yeah, again, please feel free to reach out. Happy to answer questions or help in any way that we can.
Excellent. Well, thanks everybody. Always a good presentation when we end on time. Diana, appreciate it. Mike, Katie, Argentum, and the rest of the states, Michelle,